to the latest edition of Bullish on Business. In this video, you'll learn techniques of how to acquire more clients, better clients, and more assets to your practice. We're going to hear from one of the very best practices in all of Ameriprise when it comes to acquiring more clients and more assets, consistently bringing in 8 figures every year in new assets with many new 7-figure clients. These techniques can be directly applied into your practice. So enjoy these, absorb them, try to pick 1 or 2 things at most that you can copy and implement today in your practice. Let's get these new techniques going this week. Let's get some new results happen in your practice, and let's bring in more clients, better clients, and more assets to your business. Stay bullish. We're looking forward to hearing about your results.
Hello, Dynamic Directions. I welcome you again to our corporate office, the main office in Owensboro, Kentucky, as David Letterman used to say. We're joined here in the month of September. We've got a couple months before the election, so we're going to touch on that in the market update. But basically, it looks like from a big picture standpoint, we may be seeing a sea change of leadership in the market. This probably began in July. Some of the FANG stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, or you can throw Apple in there, and Nvidia, really started to take some flack over the summer, specifically Facebook. They had some earnings miss with higher than expected operating expenses due to supervision that was required, but then they've also been on Capitol Hill. Most of the social media stocks were there, Facebook, Twitter, etc. And it looks like the consumer staples, utilities, your more value-driven U.S. stocks have picked up steam and momentum since then. So we're not making a market call that the leadership has specifically changed, but I think if you monitor your different funds and indexes and individual securities that you're invested in, you might see that. Also, very quietly, and I think is a bigger story, rates have gone up. So that means people are, selling their bonds, not so much buying them. And as we do this recording, the 10-year Treasury is at 308, 30 years at almost 3.25. Those are definitely rates that are a little bit higher than they were in May, and may be, in fact, on the 10-year, the highest they've been in quite some time. The market has been able to shrug that off and keep focusing on really the fundamentals here in the U.S. economy. The big headwinds have been primarily all about trade, and I think on our last call I went through some of the concerns we had specifically with China, and even this morning Bloomberg was reporting the number 2 in China. I don't know his name, it's not General Zhao's chicken, but he was saying their economy was dramatically slowing down. And I do think, and you can go back and look at our last call when I talked about the issues with China, that definitely if there were a time in the last 12 years to really try to get some concessions out of China, now does make sense given the fact that their economy looked like it was slowing down, and now there's actual verbal confirmation of that from whatever commissar is number 2 in China. But specifically speaking, most of the good returns this year have been in the U.S. Given the strength of the U.S. dollar, also concerns in other emerging markets, those have been definitely out of favor. Weakness in China, as we've mentioned, also is a headwind for emerging markets. So most of your better performing investments have been U.S. centric, and I would really discuss with your clients the reason why you want to be balanced in a portfolio instead of being totally overweighted with growth, because at some point growth will fade, and we may get a reversion to the mean, so to speak, and your value stocks like consumer staples, utilities, and maybe even some financials might take the lead. One thing that has been a bit concerning is within the financial sector, a lot of positions have really not moved much this year. If you're watching this and you're an Ameriprise financial advisor, look at your company stock, it's down dramatically from the highs in January. But also that's true for Met, Prudential, Most of your property and casualty insurers have been very flat to negative this year. So the old textbook that, in a rising rate environment you want to buy financials, unless you've bought a few of the larger banks or a couple of the regionals, you've been kind of disappointed. And I think looking at our models, the XLF index is up maybe just 3%, maybe even less than that year to date. So that's definitely something to watch and look for opportunities there. One thing to note that as rates have kind of quietly increased, look at whatever REIT product you're using and see how they have performed. The one that's on our spreadsheets that we use the most is the Blackstone product. And as I've said before, about 94% of all their mortgages are adjustable. Now, what to watch for the next, let's say, 2 months. There'll be a lot of news flow about the U.S. presidential election. And it's hard to escape the political commentary depending on where you are. My mother came and stayed with us for a week to take care of her sister that lives here in town. And boy, I got a dose of Fox News every morning, noon, and night. Now, one thing that our guys at BCA say, Ben, you can look at this. They're not too worried about the election. As they say, they use an old crap shooting term, fade the midterms. But they really think no matter what the results of the election, they think Washington will look a lot like it does now. They've done a lot of studying on how the American democracy works and what are the majorities needed to run Trump out of office or other things. And they just don't think that's a likely scenario. They think where our attention needs to be focused is on what's going on with the Brexit and what's going on with oil prices. So let's talk about Brexit first. The Brexit deal has been kicked down the road, like that little Deadpool flick, and they've put that off until November. Some of the, I would say English stocks, British stocks, they have responded a little bit negatively to this, and it appears that Theresa May may be losing support within her own Conservative Party. She's been kind of heckled by Boris Johnson and some other politicians over there. So their concern with the Brexit is that it doesn't go as smoothly as it has been going, and you get maybe some type of knock-on effect globally with weakness in Europe. Their bigger prediction and the thing they want us to watch is oil prices. They feel like that once this trade negotiation with China and the rest of the world concludes, which they think it will wrap up probably sometime this year, all the focus is going to be on what to do with Iran to keep them from acquiring the technology needed for nuclear weapons. Iran, on the other hand, will escalate their behaviors, and a large percentage of the world's crude exports have to go dangerously close to Iran through the Straits of Hormuz. Also, Iran can be like a, gnat that's just bothersome at a picnic by continuing to go into Iraq and really stir up the local populations there. There is a pretty good friction between Sunni and Shia Muslims in Iraq, where Iran is predominantly Shia, and they can stir up some of those long simmering tribalism type conflicts there and really influence Iraqi oil production. Also, along with this, they feel like Venezuela literally is a smoldering dumpster fire of a failed state. After Chevron had some guys arrested and kidnapped, they pulled out of the country. And at one time, Venezuela was probably one of the top 4 or 5 leading exporters of crude oil on earth. And now their production has dropped off dramatically. Given the sad state of affairs there, BCA thinks it wouldn't be crazy to see crude exports totally stop, given how dangerous the local political environment is there. So you take that together, they have a witch's brew where they think oil might run up to close to 120 a barrel. That's on Brent North Sea crude. That would mean higher unleaded gasoline. Here's what we watch, of course. But in all of our models, we have kind of stayed true to the energy allocations that we have, and it's paid off. There's a couple positions that are down year to date, but I tend to agree with their synopsis that there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and the heat that gets turned up on especially Iran, they can cause mischief in a lot of oil producing countries. So look at ways to protect your client's portfolio and benefit from rising oil prices. The same with a prolonged and maybe messy Brexit. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with our marketing tip of the month. Hello, D2. I'm here today to talk about marketing. The best marketing is helping people with things that they know they need help with and they really don't know anything about. Also, a great marketing plan is to provide a service that people willingly say, this is what I needed. So how do you do that in our service, in our business? One such opportunity, unfortunately, usually happens several times a year in an office and handling a death claim. And how many of you as advisors have sat down with the surviving spouse or a child who has been named executor or executrix, and probably the first or second words out of their mouth are, Drew, what do I do? How do I do this? I feel overwhelmed. I've got a lot going on, and then now I have to settle dad or my husband's estate. The light bulb should be going off on all of our minds as financial advisors. Say, this is an opportunity. And absolutely it is. If you go out to Advisor Compass, there's a lot of resources for this. And one of the marketing activities that we've done is just team with a local lawyer and set up a very informal Q&A. What does an executor do? What are the roles and responsibilities? And how do you select an executor? This will help you have a larger pool of potential, not only clients, but prospects show up, people that are thinking about who they should name as executor in their own situation, but also if they are an executor of a parent or they've been made aware of that, then they'll have some ideas on how this should work and where should it start. So let's begin. So one, keep track of your death claim situations as they go on through the years, and try to have a running tally of the common questions. Here in Kentucky, we always run into, what do I need to do first? Well, I need to get a lawyer. As you know, as a financial advisor, the ownership of the accounts really trump a lot of what's going on and will dictate whether or not the will need to be probated or how assets are disposed of. So that's where you start, is talking about ownerships and how to identify ownerships. Secondly, it's a great time for a conversation to say, not only should you be thinking about your roles and responsibilities, but as we go through this, think about with your own kids who would be best suited to be the executor. Obviously, offer all the help that we can do as financial advisors to make the transition as easy as possible, but look out for a few pitfalls. Number one, some states have death taxes. Kentucky's a state like that. And in Kentucky, the amount of death tax depends on the relation of the decedent. So children and spouses, those are tier one. There's really no death taxes to speak of. But once you get into, say, nieces, nephews, cousins, just friends, there's going to be taxes to consider. So that's definitely a conversation where you can do some pre-planning and see what can be done to plan for those taxes and look like a hero up front. Secondly, there's always those nagging assets that dad went out and bought an old truck just to drive around on the farm, or bought a boat, and eventually there looks like there's always some assets that are just in one person's name. Now, Kentucky has laws about small estate affidavits. We've worked in other states such as Oklahoma, Missouri. They have the same type of paperwork, but whatever jurisdictions you work in, work with attorneys to know exactly what workarounds can be there for those nagging assets that are small in dollar amount and you don't want to do a full probate proceeding. Is there any way to avoid that? That's how you can bring some real value to the situation. Obviously, while clients are alive, you can do an inventory. Don't leave any stone unturned, and help to get titles, deeds, ownerships put in whatever way they need to be to make the estate transition as smooth as possible. So these are things that people sometimes don't like to talk about, but I think if you poll your client base, you would see there is a tremendous amount of built up need and demand for kind of a group explanation about how this works. Obviously, it's an opportunity for them to bring friends and family that would be prospects for you, and at the very least, deepen relationships that you have already with your clients. Our first run at this, I think we have about 20 people that are going to be here, of which we've got about a half dozen prospects. That basically it's kind of a word of mouth. We've made notes of who's asked for this in the past, and it's worked out pretty well. So we'll keep you posted on how it works, but we think that's a great marketing idea, especially as you close out 18 and you build your marketing plan for 2019. Give people what they want and what they need, and you'll have great success. Until next time, I'll talk to you in October. We'll have more midterm election highlights. I'll have my hair looking like Sean Hannity's and my face looking like Greta Van Susteren, just so we're fair and balanced here at D2 Television. Thanks.